with a grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Leviticus 5. If someone sins because he has failed to testify after receiving notice to testify as a witness regarding what he has observed or learned, he is to be held responsible. When a person has touched a ceremonially unclean thing inadvertently, such as the carcass of an unclean animal, or some unclean creeping thing, he will be unclean and guilty nevertheless. When he inadvertently touches the uncleanness of a human being, whatever his uncleanness that made him unclean may be, when he himself comes to know about it, he will be guilty. When a person has sworn inadvertently by what he has said, whether for evil or good, whatever it was that the person spoke, when he comes to understand what he said, he will incur guilt by one of these things. When a person is guilty of one of these things, then he is to confess whatever sin it was and bring compensation to the Lord for the guilt that he committed, a female from the flock, whether a lamb or goat, for a sin offering. Then the priest is to make atonement for him. If he can't afford a goat, then he is to bring to the Lord for his sin offering 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. He is to bring them to the priest, who will offer a sin offering first. He is to wring off its head without separating it. Then he is to sprinkle some of the blood from the sin offering on the side wall of the altar. Now as to the remainder of the blood, he is to pour it out at the base of the altar for a sin offering. With respect to the second offering, he is to prepare it as a burnt offering, according to the approved procedure. The priest is to make atonement for him on account of his sin that he had committed. Then it will be forgiven him. If he can't afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, then he is to bring as his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering for what he has committed. He is to put no olive oil or frankincense on it, since it's a sin offering. He is to bring it to the priest. The priest is to take a handful as a memorial and burn it on the altar as an offering made by fire to the Lord. It's a sin offering. The priest will make atonement for him, on account of the sin that he had committed in any of these things, and it will be forgiven him. As far as the priest is concerned, it will be a meal offering. The Lord told Moses, when a person commits a truly treacherous act and sins inadvertently concerning the sacred things of the Lord, then he is to bring a trespass offering to the Lord from the flock as compensation for his guilt. It is to be a ram without defect, estimated as to its value in silver shekels, according to the sanctuary shekel. He is to compensate for whatever sin he had committed concerning the sacred things of the Lord, add a 5th part to it, and give it to the priest. The priest is to make atonement for him with the ram as a sin offering, and he'll be forgiven. If a person sins and does what the Lord commanded is not to be done, and if he didn't know that he had sinned, then he will be guilty nevertheless. He is to bring from the flock to the priest a ram without defect, estimated as to its value in silver shekels, as a guilt offering. Then the priest is to make atonement for him concerning his inadvertent act that he committed through ignorance, and it will be forgiven him. It's a sin offering for his guilt in the Lord's presence.
Give thanks with a grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Leviticus 6. The Lord told Moses, a person sins against the Lord by acting treacherously toward his neighbor regarding something entrusted to his care, regarding security for a loan, robbery, if he has oppressed his neighbor, if he has found something that had been lost and then lied about it, or if he makes a false oath about any of these things, thus committing a sin with respect to these things. If that person has sinned and has been found guilty, then he is to return the stolen thing that he took or obtained by oppression, or the security that had been entrusted to him, or the lost thing that he had found, or the thing about which he had given a false oath. He is to restore it in full, add a 5th to it, then give it to whom it belongs the very day he's found guilty. Now as to his guilt offering, he is to bring to the Lord a ram without defect from the flock, estimated as to its value, to the priest. Then the priest is to make atonement for him in the Lord's presence, and it will be forgiven him regarding whatever he did. The Lord told Moses, "Deliver these orders to Aaron and his sons concerning the regulations for burnt offerings. The burnt offering is to remain on the hearth of the altar throughout the entire night until morning, and the fire on the altar is to be kept burning along with it. The priest is to clothe himself with a linen robe and undergarments. Then he is to take the ashes of the burnt offering on the altar that had been consumed by the fire and set them beside the altar. Then he is to change his clothes, dressing himself with a different set of clothes, and take the ashes to a clean place outside the camp. The fire on the altar is to be kept burning continuously without being extinguished. The priest is to burn wood on it every morning, arrange burnt offerings over it, and then burn the fat contained in the peace offerings over it. The fire is to continue to burn on the altar and is never to be extinguished. This is the law concerning grain offerings. Aaron's sons are to offer them in the Lord's presence, in front of the altar. He is to take a handful of fine flour for a grain offering, some olive oil, and all of the frankincense for the grain offering, and make a sacrifice of smoke on the altar as a memorial portion, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons are to eat what remains of the unleavened offering at this sacred place, the court of the tent of meeting. It is not to be baked with leaven. I've given it as their portion out of my offerings made by fire. It's a most holy thing, like the sin and guilt offerings. Every male of Aaron's sons is to eat it as a portion continually allotted for your generations from the offerings made by fire to the Lord. Anyone who touches them is to be holy. Then the Lord told Moses, "This is the offering that Aaron and his sons are to offer to the Lord the day he is anointed. A tenth of an ephah of flour is to be offered throughout the day, half in the morning and half in the evening. It is to be prepared with olive oil on a griddle. Once it has been mixed thoroughly, bake it, bring it in pieces, and offer it like a grain offering of broken pieces, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. The anointed priest who succeeds him from among his sons is to offer it. As a permanent statute, it is to be offered whole and made to smoke in the Lord's presence. Every grain offering from a priest is to be burned whole. It is not to be eaten." Then the Lord told Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons that this is the regulation concerning sin offerings. Slaughter the sin offering in the same place where the whole burnt offering is slaughtered, in the Lord's presence. It's a most holy thing. The priest who offers it as a sin offering is to eat it at a sacred place in the court of the tent of meeting. Whoever touches its meat will be holy. If some of its blood sprinkles on a garment, wash where it was sprinkled in a sacred place. The earthen vessel in which it was boiled is to be broken, unless it was boiled in a bronze vessel, in which case it is to be polished very well and rinsed in water. Every male among the priests is to eat it. It's a most sacred thing. Any sin offering from which its blood was brought to the tent of meeting to make atonement in the sacred place is not to be eaten. Instead, it is to be incinerated."
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Leviticus 7. This is the regulation concerning guilt offerings. They are most holy. The guilt offering is to be offered in the same place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest is to sprinkle some of its blood on the altar and around it. As to all its fat, that is, the fat on the tail and the fat covering the internal organs, the one presenting the sacrifice is to offer it. But the 2 kidneys, the fat over them by the loins, and the appendage on the liver are to be taken away, along with the kidneys. Then the priest is to offer them on the altar, incinerating them with fire as a guilt offering to the Lord. Any male among the priests may eat it, provided that it is eaten at a sacred place as a most holy thing. The law for the sin offering is the same as the guilt offering. It belongs to the priest who made atonement with it. The hide from the burnt offering brought by the offerer is to belong to the priest. Every grain offering that's baked in the oven and everything that's prepared in a stew pan or in the frying pan belongs to the priest who offered it. Furthermore, every grain offering that's mixed with olive oil or that's dry will be for Aaron's sons, each one like the other. This is the law concerning the sacrifice for peace offerings that are to be brought to the Lord. If someone brings it to demonstrate thanksgiving, then he is to present along with the thanksgiving offering unleavened cakes mixed with olive oil, unleavened wafers spread with olive oil, and cakes of mixed fine flour with olive oil. Along with the cakes of unleavened bread, he is to bring his thanksgiving offering with his peace offerings. He is to present one from each grain offering, a separate offering to the Lord. It will belong to the priest who sprinkles the blood of the peace offering. As to the meat contained in his peace offerings, it is to be eaten on the day it is offered. Nothing of it is to remain until morning. If his sacrifice accompanies a fulfilled vow or is a voluntary offering, it is to be eaten on the day the offerer brings the sacrifice. Anything left over is to be eaten the next day, but whatever remains uneaten from the meat of the sacrifice by the third day is to be incinerated. If any of the meat of his sacrifice of peace offerings is eaten on the third day, it won't be accepted for the one who brought it. It is to be considered as refuse, and whoever eats it will bear the punishment of his iniquity. Meat that comes in contact with the ceremonially unclean thing is not to be eaten. Incinerate it instead. As for ceremonially clean meat, anyone who is clean may eat it. But the person who eats meat from the sacrifice that belongs to the Lord, while still affected by his uncleanness, is to be eliminated from contact with his people. Any person who touches a ceremonially unclean thing, whether the uncleanness pertains to human beings, animals, or to creeping things, and then eats from the meat of peace offerings that belongs to the Lord is to be eliminated from contact with his people. The Lord told Moses, "Tell the Israelis, you are not to eat the fat of an ox, a lamb, or a goat. The carcass of an animal that died of its own and an animal torn by wild beast may be used for any purpose except for eating. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal that has been offered by fire to the Lord is to be eliminated from contact with his people. You are not to eat any form of blood in any of your dwellings, whether it's from birds or animals. Any person who eats any form of blood is to be eliminated from contact with his people." The Lord told Moses, "Tell the Israelis that whoever brings a peace offering sacrifice to the Lord is to bring his offering to the Lord from the sacrifice of his peace offerings. He is to bring the offering made by fire with his own hands to the Lord. He is to bring the fat with the breast, since the breast is to be waved as a raised offering to the Lord. The priest will burn the fat on the altar, but the breast belongs to Aaron and his sons. From the sacrifices of your peace offerings give the right thigh to the priest as a raised offering to the Lord. The descendant of Aaron's sons who brings the blood and the fat from the peace offering is to keep the right thigh for his own portion, since I've taken the breast and the thigh as raised offerings from the sacrifices of peace offerings of the Israelis and have given them to Aaron the priest and his sons as their perpetual portion from the Israelis. This is the consecrated portion for Aaron and his descendants from the offerings made by fire to the Lord, the day they were presented to be priests to the Lord. This is what the Lord had commanded to give them the day he anointed them from among the Israelis, a perpetual portion for their generations. This is the regulation concerning burnt, grain, sin, guilt, and installation offerings, along with the sacrifice for peace offerings. This is what the Lord had commanded Moses on Mount Sinai on the day he commanded the Israelis to bring their offerings to the Lord in the Sinai wilderness.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Lord.